Eilsabetta Sirani was born in Bologna in 1638. During her lifetime, she would learn from her father, who was also an artist. Sirani's father, also known as Giovanni Andrea Sirani, was an assistant and follower of Guido Reni. Reni was the leading master for Bologna art at this time. With this, Eilsabetta Sirani would learn and master her craft while being in her father's workshop, learning from him but also observing plaster casts and prints from her father's extensive library. Unfortunately, while Sirani was just 16, her father would become ill, causing her to not only be in charge of the shop, but also be responsible for taking care of her parents and her 3 siblings. At the age of 19, Sirani would become an independent painter, as her first commission was the baptism of Christ for the Certosa of Bologna. She used the shop to open an academy to train female students as well. Sirani was known for finishing her paintings in a timely manner. In fact, people would come to her studio and watch her work. She would be commissioned by various wealthy people, nobles, and royal patrons. One of her patrons included the Grand Duke Cosimo III de' Medici. Now, let's take a look at a few works that Sirani is most famous for. Judith with the Head of Holofernes is one of Sirani's most famous works. She actually did 2 versions of this piece, and I will be examining these 2 versions in this video. Both have the same subject matter, just different compositions and layout. To give more religious context on the subject matter, the Book of Judith tells the story of the Jewish widow Judith saving the Israelites by the Assyrians by decapitating their general Holofernes. The Assyrian army had besieged her city prior. In order to lure Holofernes and catch him off guard, she had to make him drunk at a banquet. Sirani tended to base her artwork off of strong female leaders and role models, explaining where most of her inspiration came from. This version was made in 1660 and is currently residing at the Walters Art Museum in the United States. In this rendition, Judith is seen in the center of the canvas, and on the bottom right she is holding the head of Holofernes. Also positioned on Judith's right is her maidservant, as she helps Judith place the head in a sack. Judith not only is the center of attention in this piece, but she is also depicted with light shining on her, while the other figures in background are dark in contrast. She is wearing various bright colors, ranging from light beige to blue and red. The colors are a bit faded, which dulls down the brightness of these colors being used. However, compared to the rest of the colors, it contrasts in order to present Judith with more emphasis and importance. In addition to this, the maidservant is depicted with less beauty and light, again emphasizing Judith's youth and beautiful features. If these characteristics weren't enough, the head of Holofernes is also presented in a dark and unappealing manner, again prioritizing Judith and her beauty. We can see that Sirani uses a more relaxed depiction of the figures, not using so much chiaroscuro or realism to define the human bodies and their features. The hands, neck, and facial features of Judith aren't too intensely shaded or detailed, yet there is still a naturalistic element to the way that Sirani painted these figures. The maid and head of Holofernes does have slightly more detail, as Sirani uses chiaroscuro to depict the wrinkles on their face. In addition to this, the clothing and fabric placed around the painting is shown in intense detail, as the folds and wrinkles are carefully sculpted on the canvas. At the bottom of the painting is a sword they used to decapitate Holofernes. Let's look at the other version that Sirani did. This painting is from the late 17th century. Judith remains the focus point as she is positioned in the middle of the canvas. The maidservant and head of Holofernes is positioned on the left side of the canvas compared to the other painting. These aren't the only figures depicted, however, as there are 2 figures shown on each side, standing behind Judith. Also, a crowd of people are shown towards the bottom section of the canvas. Judith's hands, arms, and facial features aren't intensely depicted using chiaroscuro, yet the maidservant's arms are shown with more detail, as you can see the muscles and structure of the arm. In addition, the wrinkles are seen on both facial features of Holofernes and the maidservant. This again contrasts with Judith's beauty, fairness, and smooth complexion. The colors that Judith wears is far more intense and bright compared to the rest of the colors shown. The night sky is dark, and the figures around her are shown in neutral and passive colors. There is some slight atmospheric perspective being used, as the buildings and crowd around them are shown a little farther, just like it would appear in real life. Both paintings have intense similarities. The overall message and emphasis that Sirani tries to give the viewer carries on throughout each piece. They are both set up in a way that gives off similar intentions. Eilsabetta sadly passed away at the age of 27. She unfortunately fell ill on her last days being here, being in severe pain and discomfort. Many had thought that her maid was responsible for her death. Prior to her death, the maid was convicted before an autopsy was conducted. After all of this, it was concluded that Sirani died of natural causes. Sirani's funeral was beautiful and elaborate. It was a big event filled with formal orations, special poetry and music, and even a life-size sculpture of Sirani in the act of painting.